So my name is Raja.
What's up, everybody? Everybody pretty much knows me as DIZZ.
Give me a funky beat and I'll ride one. Don't knock a pale face till you tried one. They say I don't know how to act, player. Ask me if this crack feels wise. I'll say yeah, I'm the wise crack flowing on a beat. I thought you knew this. Hey yo, Ross, tell them how we do this.
To me it ain't got a thing. If it ain't got that spin, you can suck on my flow. And eat a thing, get it on. Drop the bomb, ripping a cut with a man, King Kong all night long.
I go by Charm the Riot musically, and I've been a part of really one or a couple of groups actually now that I think about it. I've been part of a group called Biofeedback, and then I've been a part of a group called KONTRAST with Chris.
Contrast.
Yeah, KONTRAST. KONTRAST.
Yeah. Right now, I go by Insane Bass. That's the new name. As far as groups go, I started rapping back in probably like 1990, and I was in one group called Second to None back in '91. We didn't know that there was another group called Second to None. So that was my first group, and then KONTRAST with Raj was my second group. And then after that, I was in a third group called Major Players.
So where were you guys born and raised?
So I was born in a place called Slough, which is in South London in England. When my mom divorced her military dad, when I was like 12 years old, she ended up coming to California, and so she decided to settle in Sacramento. And so I was basically kind of raised a combination between England and the United States. As a military kid, I was one of those kids where I'd be in school for 1 year and then I'd get yanked out, and we would go from England to the United States because we'd get stationed in an Air Force base here in the United States. And then we'd do a stint here in the United States for about a year and a half, and then we'd go back to England. So again, pretty much born in London and kind of raised in a combination of England and the United States.
My whole family is from California, but I was actually born in Dallas, Texas. My dad had gotten a job out there working for Magnavox way back in the 70s. He took my mom out there. I was born in Dallas, Texas, and basically came back to California by the time I was 2. So all I've ever known is California, but yeah, I was born out Lone Star State.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah, all the southern food and all that good stuff.
Okay. And then so you were in Chico.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. My mom is from Redding, dad is from Chico. So yeah, pretty much Northern California.
I went to Cordova High School in Rancho, and yeah, I'd say late 80s, early 90s. Did my thing, just kind of floundered around for many years after that.
Let me start with DIZZ real quick as far as musically, because I know you put the first tape out, or you had the album out in '90. Proving them all wrong. Let's talk about that, man. Like, how'd that all start out there in Chico, dog? Tell me about that.
Okay, so when I think I was about 15 years old, and my first job was at a restaurant. It was called Lion's Restaurant, and there was a cook there that I think he was from Hawaii, and we used to, after everyone's done working, they would kind of go party at his house. And I remember we were partying at his house, and he had a 4-track recorder, and he was into guitars, and it was in his bedroom, and he was like, "Hey, come check this out." He had a 4-track, and he played a little guitar riff on one track, and then he rewound it, played a second track, and it just blew my mind away because I didn't know you could record something and then come back and record again. And so that was like the first time I'd ever seen that. So I was about 15, and then if you fast forward, I graduated high school when I was 17, and about a year before that, so it was probably about 16, I had a job, was making a little bit of money, you know how it is, you got no expenses. So I took all my money and I bought a 4-track, and that was my first piece of gear. And then I bought a little drum machine. It was like a think it was called a HR-16B. I think that it was a Leasis. So I just had a drum machine and a 4-track. I was about 16. It was my junior year of high school. So I started doing that. And then about a year later, I had finished what became Proving Them All Wrong. And if you go back and listen, the beats are kind of sparse. You know, there's not like keyboard bass lines, and because all the sounds were coming from the drum machine. So it's kind of cool to listen to it, but it almost sounds like just drum machines. You know, I think it had like some little bell sounds. I was trying to make some keyboard sounds. So I remember it was the summer of 1990 when I dropped that cassette, and I had just graduated high school. My mom had put me in in school a year early, which I kind of wish she wouldn't have, because it was hard athletically. You know, I was always playing against, you know, these guys that are a year older than me. So in hindsight, I kind of wish I was regular, because I would have spent my whole senior year like enjoying all that fame from that tape. But when that tape dropped, I had just graduated. So I went to I think it was called Starlight Audio. It was a kind of a country western. It was a full-blown studio, very nice. And they pressed up. They had like a wall of cassette recorders, you know, where they could record like 20 at a time. And I mixed down onto they were called metal cassettes. They were the really nice cassettes, and that was the master. It wasn't even a DAT. It was just a metal cassette. And I took that in, and I got 100 of those pressed up. I think we did. My dad owned a neon sign shop that his father had started, so I was able to do the little graphics. I think there was a lady there that helped me with the graphics. And I just kind of took the graphics. I think we printed them at like a Kinko's or whatever back in the days and cut them out. And so I took the 100 cassettes, you know, stuffed them myself. I don't think they had shrink wrapping. And I just made a little cardboard box stand. I remember, I could see it today. It just said local rapper, and that's all it said on the top. And it held like maybe 5 cassettes. And back in Chico, you had a lot of record stores. You had Tower Records. There was a place called Melody Records, Sundance Records, Camelot Records in the mall. So I just took them around, and it was a cool place just like this. And I remember they put them kind of behind where the cash register was. Like, it was perfect placement, you know, like you check out and it was right there. And and then it was all on consignment. You know, I'd check my traps like every week, and then, you know, get my little money and give them some more tapes. And then I actually sold those first 100, and I got a second 100 pressed, and then that was it. So that one year, I went to Butte College, which is, you know, where Aaron Rodgers went, you know, the football player. And I went out there for a year, didn't do great. I wasn't good in school. And after that year, you know, I sold those 200 tapes. And that's when me and my best friend, Nathan Sanders, we decided to move. We just wanted to go to the next biggest city, which was Sacramento. And that's how we actually ended up here in the summer of '91. We rented a place, Garfield Village, which is still there. It's over there off of Auburn and Garfield. And and that's when I started kind of working on my next project. I started kind of elevating my gear. But yeah, that's where the Proving Them All Wrong came from, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's tight. I'm gonna get to where you were starting to go.
Yeah.
But what kind of car was that on the cover, man?
That was an Isuzu Impulse.
Okay.
That was my dad's car, and my dad was a real tech guy. Like, he loved all the tech gadgets, and that was like the first car that would talk to you. Like, it would actually talk to you. It would say left turn, or, you know, it had like a computerized voice.
Really?
So it was really, and this was like in 1990, and it was an Isuzu Impulse.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I was big into basketball back then, and you can see I have my Converse Weapons sitting on the roof.
Yeah.
Because that was real big. I was kind of before the Jordans, I think.
Okay.
Or it was right when I think the Jordan 3s had just come out, but I was all about those Converse weapons. Those big old clod hoppers.
That's fire, man.
So that came out in 91?
90.
Yeah, and that's actually taken right in front of my dad's house right there. It was just, yeah, that was right there. And I'm talking on probably his, he was high tech. He had the actual cell phones that were in the car, like the suitcase kind, and that's what I'm talking on right there.
Okay, yeah.
That's like one of those official, before even they had the brick phones, it was the phone before that where it would look like a little suitcase.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
bag phone or before the bag phone?
Yeah, it was like a bag phone, and I think he had it kind of installed in the car, but yeah. Rap wasn't the first thing that I did. So I fell in love with rap. I think it was in about 8th grade.
Yeah.
And I still remember his name. Shout out Morgan Chapman. He was just a friend of mine, and he had a Walkman on, and he let me hear it, and it was MC Shy D. And I just remember hearing the beat, and I was like hypnotized. I was like, wow, I never heard something like that powerful, just the drums.
Yeah.
That's when I fell in love with rap, and that was probably, might have been 1986. So what I wanted to do, I'm the type of person, like I like to figure out how people did stuff. I was like, how did they make this? So I didn't just say, oh, I'm going to be a rapper. I wanted to figure out how they made the beats. And so the first thing I did was I bought that 4-track and the drum machine and then the turntables, and I started making the beats. But I started rapping because there was nobody doing it. There was nobody in my town. There was actually one person in my town, and he was like a transplant from LA. And his name was LP.
LP.
I think it stood for MC Lollipop.
Okay.
And this dude actually ended up being part of Ice-T's clique and all that. So he was way more advanced than me. I mean, this guy was a really good rapper. And I think he was from Watts. But that was it. I just said, you know what, I'm going to just start writing some rhymes and grab the mic, and I was learning how to kind of piece a song together just because I was trying to figure out the puzzle. And yeah, that's pretty much kind of how that happened. There just wasn't anybody out there doing it.
Yeah.
And small city,
Right.
maybe we had 70,000 people,
Yeah.
Yeah. And this was like 89, rap was still pretty young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was that like, man? Having your own tape from Chico and being one of the only like rappers in 1990 out there. That's crazy.
I think I was just in the moment. I didn't look at it like that.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't like all big headed or anything. It was just like normal to me. I was like, okay. I think I was thinking of the next step. Like, how can I make this better? But now when I look back, people are like, wow, that was, I communicate with people that are from Chico. In fact, there's a few people that came after me that were very similar to me, but they were maybe 4 years younger.
Uh-huh.
I want to shout out Marty James. I just connected with him, and he said I was an inspiration for him because when I dropped the tape, I was probably 17, and I'm thinking maybe he's 13.
Mm-hmm.
And he was doing the same thing I was. He was actually making beats in his bedroom, doing the same thing I was doing, but I didn't know him. And now he look up his name. His name is Marty James, and he's Grammy nominated. He's got all kinds of accolades, and it was very interesting because he said that I kind of inspired him, But he was doing the same minds were thinking at the same time.
Yeah.
He was just young, like 13,
Trippy.
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, you had to have a lot of drive to get that tape out then, man. That's a trip.
Yeah, and I didn't, now thinking back on it, I wasn't worried about rejection. You would think a lot of people maybe would be like, oh man, are they gonna like laugh at me or whatever, I don't think that ever crossed my mind. I was like, hey, I'm just doing this, just loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tight, man. And you produced all that. You made all those beats on that.
Yep. So that was a little 4-track. You had to get creative, you know, like you had to kind of do the kick and the snare and all that and bounce it to 1 track, and then you'd have 3 left. And so you really had to kind of figure out, you know, and then maybe you do your rap on 1 track and your backup on another track, and now you have 1 track left to maybe do some scratches. So you're really limited. And it's
Yeah.
called ping ponging. You could record on 3 tracks and dump those down to 1 if you like. And then maybe you could record 2 more and bounce all those to 1, and you could end up getting like 24 tracks, but I didn't do anything like that. Each time you bounce, you would lose a little quality, you know, so you really wouldn't want to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like compressing it every time, right?
Yeah, it's like going from a cassette to a cassette.
Yeah.
So, you know, I could have made something with 16 tracks, but the fidelity, you know, would have went down. And once you ping pong them, you're locked in. You can't adjust those levels anymore. They're sealed, you know,
So Proving Them Wrong was just 4 tracks, basically?
4 tracks, yeah.
See, I don't know a lot about Proving Them Wrong. How many songs is on that?
So I believe there was 8, but 2 of them were just like instrumentals, like kind of like a bass track. So I think there were like 6 full songs. Yeah, here's a picture of that.
Let me take a look at this.
Um,
And this is Chico,
Yep.
17 years old. You're taking this picture in front of your dad's house, and you're recording this in the home studio. You're
Yeah.
not going to a studio.
In fact, on that J card, you can see it says Icebox. I think it says, it's right here. It says Icebox Productions.
Okay.
And I called it that because my dad had this back room. It was pretty nice. It was right off the pool. But it was freezing out there. But it was like this big room with a couch, and it was really nice. But I called it Icebox Productions just because it was like a refrigerator in there, you know.
So I don't know if I knew about this cassette. So I met you
Yeah.
later on
Yep.
in your discography.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I even knew about that.
Yeah. So the next one was Jacked, and that's actually, and we'll get to that. That's how him and I met. So he, by that time, this was like my first album. I was on to the second one. So yeah, I'm not surprised. I mean, that was like my first one. Yeah.
So you were a DIY pioneer.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
One of the first white rappers in NorCal, for sure.
Yeah. I think that actually dropped before Vanilla Ice, because I think Vanilla Ice was 91. Because I remember things, because I remember when that came out. I got that tape. I liked that tape. I was jamming that tape. And that was about a year later, yeah. Even though I got to give it to like Vanilla Ice, like his rhyme, he was more kind of advanced than I was on this one. You know what I mean? If you listen to him back to back. But yeah. I guess I beat him to the punch, but
Right.
he was a little more advanced, or he was probably, a little more technical with the rhymes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Huh.
I want to keep it like a timeline style. I don't want to get past your first release, man. The Peace Seeker.
Yeah.
Was that out before Jacked, or was Jacked out already and then?
I know for a fact that was out before Jacked.
Okay, cool.
And
Okay.
see, a lot of things, like I was telling Raj, I don't have a perfect memory, but a lot of my memories are time stamped by either what equipment I was working on, or the reason I know his album came out first was because I was jamming his album at my house while I was still working on Jacked.
Okay.
Interesting.
Like Jacked wasn't even out, so I'm thinking that was probably 91
Yeah.
or maybe 92, because I know the summer of 92 I was jamming his cassette.
Okay. Yeah.
So
I
you
kinda-
you maybe were working on it maybe 91 or something.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
those timelines, like I said, it's all a blur. So
Yeah.
you guys are actually helping me bring it back to something.
Yeah, 91, 92 sounds right for the Prince Raj.
Yeah.
Right before we get to that real quick, Diz, how did you come up with your name?
I came up with the name. I was actually a big Biz Marquee fan. Like, I had Going Off, his first album. I love that album.
Okay.
I was lucky enough, some of this I probably shouldn't say because it might not be so legal, but I was able to have every single rap album that came out. I had it because I knew a guy that worked at a record store, and he'd basically just give them to me, you know. So I had everything. I had Biz Markie, Big Daddy Kane, every album, and I love that album, The Beats by Marley Marl, and so I think that's how I came up with the DIZZ, you know, Biz. I just put my little twist on it.
Yeah.
And then the money, it was just, that's old school. You know, there was like Tat Money, and you know, money was like something a lot of people put on their names. So I just blended them together.
There it is.
Yeah, there it is.
DIZZ Money.
DIZZ Money, yeah.
Beautiful.
That's tight.
That's
okay.
definitely old school name.
Yeah.
All right, so Prince Raj. How did you come up with your name, man? Well, you're Raja, so I guess it didn't. You were Prince. Yeah. Tell me about it, dog. Tell me about it.
I don't know, man. I like when I hear Chris, when he tells his story about how, you know, his name was formulated, and you know, it's so firm and concrete. Mine is just abstract because, like, I think, yeah, I mean, because my mom is Jamaican and my dad's Indian. I never met my dad, but my mom decided to name me after my dad, Raja, which in Indian means prince. So I think there's a connection there. I don't know if it was conscious. I didn't really put a lot of thought into my rap name. I wasn't really like a hip hop head like he was. I was more just like, I was like actually a rocker back then. So I know I didn't like get influenced by any rappers, but if you notice, like the word Prince is spelled Printz.
Yes.
I couldn't even tell you why I put the Z on there.
Yeah.
But I would just say, I probably just thought, hey, let me just put two words together and use my real name, and it just stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And good to be unique with the Z and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that name would still stand today.
You think
You
so?
know, I think I think that's a cool name. Like, I think that would still rock today, where if I came out DIZZ Money, I'm definitely rocking the retro name, you know, like, but that one, yeah, I think it stands the test of time, and I like the way you flipped the spelling of it, yeah.
Oh,
Prince. Yeah.
Royalty,
but royalty.
So that tape, man, tell me about that. Where did you record it? How many of those did you press? Were you selling them out the trunk? Was it fun? Like, was it on the radio?
Let me think. So we recorded it in a studio in Fairfield, same studio that E40 and the Click recorded. Remember what the first E40 and the Click album was? Yeah, any
Down
idea?
and Dirty.
Left Side, Down and Dirty.
yeah.
Down and Dirty sounds right.
Yeah.
It was in that studio in Fairfield. Be Legit, E40, Sugar T, the whole clique. The guy that ran the studio and owned it, he's like well known, like in Northern California. I can't think of his name. I thought his name was like Bobby something.
I was going to ask you, because it's weird. I live in Fairfield now, and there's so much history in that city.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was K. Lou.
I don't think it was K. Lou.
But all those people, like, I know Rick Rock is from Fairfield. I think Sam Bostic, Mike Mosley. All those guys are, like, from Fairfield.
Okay.
I'm trying to think, because I know K. Lou had a studio, but I'm trying to think of what studio that would be. We'd almost have to crack one of those albums out and see.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, that's crazy. I mean, he was recording right there where the Click is. You know, so our stories are, like, totally different. Like, he's already in the big-time studios, you know?
Yeah. Well, I got introduced to that studio from an original rap group from Sacramento. They're called the Royal Mixers, Rodney and Marichelle. And I was dating a girl named Michelle, who was Rodney's ex, I believe. And so that's kind of how I got into that circle, is because that girl that I was dating, her ex was one of the members of Royal Mixers. And then I think that they introduced me, and might have even gone into the studio that day when we recorded that song. Like I said, my memory's not the best. But I think, you know, we ended up recording it there. It's a sample from the Blackbirds, Mysterious Vibes, which is an album that came out in the 70s. Love that song. Back then I was really into jazz hip hop. I was into rock hip hop and I was into jazz hip hop. So I wasn't like a big hip hop head, but I loved Tribe Called Quest and I loved Gangstar and I loved Diggable Planets. So me mixing jazz with hip hop is totally influenced by the hip hop that I was listening to back then. So that's how I fused jazz with hip hop. And back then I didn't feel like anybody on the West Coast or in California was really like taking those two genres and blending them together. So that's kind of like the genesis of how that song came to be. And back then, like, he was doing everything himself and he was, you know, buying the equipment and really understanding the process. For me, it was more like, I just want to create something, you know? So that's kind of how it came to be. You know, I knew nothing about the recording process back then. Yeah. I was like a poser, you know, back then. I was like a big time poser. Like, I remember even in high school, like, people would ask me to be in the band, like, good musicians in high school. They'd ask me to be in their band as the singer. And I'm like, but yeah, I don't sing though. But they're like, yeah, but you got the look, you know, you got the vibe. You're our lead singer now. And so same thing, like with the hip hop, it was like people were just like, you should do some hip hop, you know, you should do it. So I'm like, all right, you know, and I just gave it a shot, and that's kind of what it turned out.
Tight.
Yeah.
Damn, so you went out there to Fairfield, recorded that, and then
Yeah.
you had it pressed up.
Oh yeah, you asked how many. I think I did a limited pressing. Like back then, cassettes. I think it was like, was it 1,000 copies minimum, or was it like 100? I thought it was like 1,000.
Yeah, it was probably either 500 or 1,000. It might have been 1,000.
It was probably like a minimum of 500, and
Yeah.
I pressed them up, did it myself, funded it myself. Just like Chris was saying, you know, you go to the local stores and you do the consignment thing. I felt like it sold out, you know. I don't know what I did with the money, honestly.
I bought one of them.
Yeah, Chris bought one of them. You know, he was like calculated, you know, with his, like, okay, I did the first pressing, then I took it and I did another pressing of the money that I made from the first. I didn't do it like that. I think that money that I made from those 1,000 cassettes that sold at the store, because I'm not a trunk, like, sell from the trunk kind of guy, like, I'm too shy for that. So all mine that sold were definitely from the store. It was all like doing the invoice and going every week, going to the store, picking up your check, dropping off another 10 cassettes. I know it sold well, but then that money that I got from it, I probably just like bought groceries with it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
groceries and smoothies, you know,
Survival.
mode. Did I answer that question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were dropping them off at like Tower Records and other places around town?
Yeah, for sure. Because back then it was like Tower Records kind of like dominated like the music scene, where that's like where you would go like if you're gonna buy your music. That was like a big deal, and we had Tower Records everywhere.
Yeah,
Probably had like 20 or 30 just in the Sacramento area alone. So it was like you didn't really need to go to any other record stores. You just hit up every single Tower Records, you get your cassettes in there, and let the checks come in.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of a hassle though, and you have to drive to each one.
Yeah.
Get out, take your cassettes in, go talk to the manager. You know, it was a lot of work, you know.
I remember that big one over off Watt. That was by where you live. That was a big one. But
That was
yeah, I
huge.
think sometimes I would phone in, you know, and they'd be nice enough to be like, oh, you have 3 of them here, you know, or,
Yeah.
you know, I think I did a lot of calls. But yeah, it was the same thing. I don't think I put it in anything but Tower Records, yeah. There
You
was
didn't
so
really need
many
to.
of them, no.
It was a lot of pounding the pavement, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had I think they had like a local rapper section. I wasn't the local rapper like this guy, but they had like a local rapper section, so you'd go in and it was like you would know like, okay, these are all the local people that are doing it. And I remember like Brother Lynch Hung and Marvelous. I remember like they were like, you know, pretty established back then.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was only because you were in a bigger city.
Yeah.
So I was in a smaller city. Otherwise, you know, if you were like in Reading or something, you would have had that same like pioneer status. You know, you were like just in a big city.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
and maybe there was like 10 people doing it, because that's what I used to do. I used to go right into the tower and go right to the local section, and I bought all of them. You know, that's how I met him. That's how I know about him. You know, I bought his tape, and yeah, checking on the competition. You know.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, see what everyone else is about and get inspired, and yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool too, because I'm sure you'll cover it, but like there's a whole intertwining of him coming out with Jacked and me coming out with that cassette, and then us actually meeting because we did that. So it's pretty interesting, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how Contrast came about. Yeah.
Yeah, that's up next, man. Let's get to it. Yeah, I'm done with Peace Seeker. Was there anything? So then Jacked was up next. In 92, you were recording in 92, finished it late 92, 93.
Yep.